Tate loved the desserts, and Noah tried finger foods while traveling abroad in Amsterdam. "I could eat this every day," Noah admitted after finishing another bite. Tate smiled. "You practically have." Only that every meal had somehow become another memory. On their final evening in Austria, Tate surprised Noah. Instead of another museum or restaurant reservation, he had arranged a small evening boat cruise along the Danube. The city shimmered beneath the night sky. Historic buildings glowed with warm golden lights, their reflections dancing across the gentle water while the boat drifted quietly downstream. It wasn't romantic, their joined hands were comforting and nice. It wasn't hesitant, but done the same way he had done it when they were little boys crossing busy streets or wandering through crowded museums, an unconscious habit that had somehow survived into adulthood. Noah looked down at their hands. Tate didn't seem to notice he was doing it, or perhaps he did and simply didn't care. They remained like that for the rest of the cruise, saying very little as the boat carried them through the quiet Austrian night. When they finally flew home a few days later, Tate's 25th birthday was only a week away. The house felt welcoming. Their friends were excited to hear stories about the trip. Jack wanted to know which galleries they had visited. For the first time in a long while, everything seemed to be exactly as it should be. Life felt steady. Everyone was healthy. Everyone was together. And as Noah unpacked their suitcases that evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that the future, for once, looked wonderfully bright. Once they had settled back into the house after returning from Lax, Noah drove over to Talia and Terrence's home one afternoon to talk about Tate's upcoming 25th birthday. Talia already had a notebook open on the kitchen table. "Oh good," she said excitedly. "I was thinking we could rent a hall this year, maybe invite everyone. We could have catering, balloons, music, one of those beautiful custom cakes." "No." Talia blinked. "No." Noah smiled apologetically. "No surprise party." She looked disappointed. "But it's his 25th birthday." "I know, Talia. That's a milestone." "I know." She folded her arms. "So why aren't we celebrating it?" "We are," Noah said. Talia waited. "Just differently." Talia listened quietly. "Birthdays make him uncomfortable. He always acts like they're just another day," she admitted. "They're not just another day to him." Noah looked out the kitchen window for a moment. "I think they remind him that people expect something from him, another year older, another year closer to taking over more responsibility, another year of everyone looking at him." Talia sighed. "I suppose you're right. So this year," Noah continued, "I want to honor what Tate actually wants." "And what does he want?" "A quiet day," Noah smiled. "Just the two of us, no relatives, friends, or presents stacked to the ceiling," Noah laughed. "I'll still get him a present and cake. I'll bake him a small one." Talia smiled. "Homemade?" "Yes, the one he likes." Talia nodded. "I can live with that," she smiled warmly. "But next year." Noah laughed. "I already told you." He pointed playfully at her. "We'll talk about it before his 26th birthday. And maybe then we can include everyone. We'll ask Tate." Talia pretended to think about it before finally nodding. "Fair enough." She stood and hugged Noah. "I just want him to be happy." "I know." Talia smiled, and if a quiet birthday with his favorite person is what makes him happy, then that's exactly what he should have. Noah smiled back. For the first time in years, it felt as though everyone had stopped trying to decide what Tate needed and had started listening to what he actually wanted. It wasn't a grand celebration, there wouldn't be speeches, dozens of guests, or even decorations, just a homemade cake, a quiet house, and the one person Tate had chosen to spend it with. For Noah, that felt like the best birthday gift anyone could give him. The night before Tate's 25th birthday, Noah and Tate were jolted awake by the shrill ringing of the house phone at around 3 in the morning. Tate let out a groggy, irritated grunt and buried his face deeper into his pillow. "For fuck's sake," he mumbled, "people calling in the middle of the night. It better not be your perv, Noah." Still half asleep, Noah reached across the nightstand and picked up the receiver before another ring could wake the entire house. "Hello," Noah answered quietly. For several long seconds there was nothing but silence, Noah frowned, wondering if someone had dialed the wrong number. Then a man's voice finally spoke. Noah's expression changed almost instantly. His eyebrows lifted with surprise before he covered the mouthpiece with his hand and turned toward Tate. "Tate," Noah said softly, "a man is calling and wants to talk. Do you want to speak with him?" Tate's sleepy annoyance disappeared in an instant. His hazel eyes snapped open. Without a word, he reached out, and Noah carefully placed the receiver into his hand. Tate held the phone to his ear. "Why didn't you call me?" he demanded immediately. "You didn't come for Christmas, you bastard." Noah watched him carefully, sitting up in bed. Tate's face was hard, but there was a flicker of something more complicated underneath the anger, years of hurt that Noah knew too well. Then Tate fell silent. His hazel eyes grew bigger with every second he was on the phone. Tate must have recognized who called him, and it wasn't somebody he liked. The person on the other end began speaking. With every passing second, Tate's expression darkened. The muscles in his jaw tightened so hard that Noah thought he might crack a tooth. "How fucking dare you call me after what you've done?" "No," Tate said flatly. Another pause. "I told you not to call me again." The voice continued. Tate's eyes narrowed into a glare. "Linus, I fucking hate you. Do you want me to call Joey? All I have to do is call my uncle and he will put you in the hospital again." Silence. "No, then don't ever call me again." With a sharp, furious motion, Tate slammed the receiver back onto the cradle hard enough to make the entire nightstand shake. The loud crack echoed through the bedroom. Noah stared at him for a moment before speaking carefully. "I thought it was Joey." Tate's voice was cold enough to send a chill through the room. "It was Linus, my fucking creepy godfather." He looked at Noah, anger simmering beneath the surface. "I don't ever want to receive calls from Linus again, understand me?" Noah gave a small nod. "I understand. And that goes for Joey too." Tate's voice shook with restrained fury as he clenched both fists until his knuckles turned white. "I don't ever want to talk to either of them again. I don't care what they have to say. I don't want their pathetic apologies. I don't want excuses. I don't want another phone call. They're dead to me." Noah didn't argue. He simply watched Tate's rigid posture and recognized that this wasn't ordinary anger. It was the kind of rage that came from old wounds that had never truly healed. After another tense moment, Tate let out an exhausted breath. He yanked the duvet over his head, shutting out the room and the conversation as though he could bury both beneath the blankets. Within minutes, the bedroom fell silent once more. Noah remained awake for a while, staring into the darkness, wondering what Linus could possibly have said after all these years, and hoping that whatever ghosts had just resurfaced would not ruin Tate's birthday before it had even begun. Noah hadn't seen Linus, Tate's godfather, since Tate's 19th birthday in 1987. Ironically, it had been exactly 6 years to the day since Linus had snuck out of the Blue House before a celebratory birthday dinner Talia threw for Tate's birthday, and no one had seen or heard from him since. That birthday had ended with Joey and Linus locked in a bitter disagreement over a business proposal. What had started as a professional dispute quickly became personal, and neither man had been willing to back down. Within weeks, Linus had packed up his life and moved to Europe. As far as Noah knew, the two of them had never spoken again. Tate had probably chosen to stand by Joey. Given how fiercely loyal Tate was to the people he loved, Noah wasn't surprised. Once Tate believed someone had betrayed his family, there was rarely any coming back from it. His loyalty was absolute, and so were his grudges. That was probably why hearing Linus's voice had infuriated him so instantly. Whatever Linus had hoped to accomplish with a 3 o'clock phone call on the eve of Tate's 25th birthday, it had only reopened a wound Tate had no interest in revisiting. Noah sighed quietly to himself. After 6 years of silence, he had a feeling that the conversation should never have happened at all. The phone rang again. Tate froze. For one long second, he simply stared at it, his chest rising and falling with restrained fury. Then he reached over to his nightstand, grabbed the first thing his hand landed on, a heavy glass, and hurled it across the room. The glass struck the telephone with a deafening crack. It exploded into shards as the phone was ripped from the nightstand, crashing to the floor and yanking the cord violently from the wall. Glass scattered across the hardwood. The bedroom fell silent. Tate stood there trembling, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Can people just fucking leave me alone?" he shouted into the empty room. "It's my fucking birthday." His voice cracked with anger. "I fucking hate this day." Noah waited a moment before carefully stepping around the broken glass. He rested a gentle hand on Tate's shoulder. "Tate." Tate didn't look at him. Noah's voice was quiet. "So, you don't want the cake or the presents I got you?" Tate remained silent. Noah rubbed his shoulder reassuringly. "I already told everyone your birthday wasn't going to be a surprise party." That finally earned a slight glance from Tate. "I talked to all your friends and to Talia. I told them their plans weren't happening this year." Tate's shoulders relaxed ever so slightly. "I figured," Noah continued, "we could just stay home. We don't have to do anything if you don't want to." He smiled softly. "It's your day, you get to decide." Another long silence passed. "I did make you a cake," Noah admitted, sounding almost sheepish. "It's homemade." His smile grew a little. "I figured if you changed your mind, even for 5 minutes, it would be here." He shrugged gently. "And if you don't, that's okay too." Tate stood motionless, staring at the shattered pieces of glass on the floor. The anger was still there, but beneath it, Noah could see something else: exhaustion. Noah didn't pressure him for an answer. He simply stayed beside him, his hand resting lightly on Tate's shoulder, silently reminding him that, birthday or not, he didn't have to face the day alone. Noah lay quietly on his back, staring up at the ceiling. He didn't say a word. There wasn't much to say. Every year it was the same. The night before Tate's birthday, something inside him seemed to unravel. The anger would begin sometime after dark, grow worse through the night, and linger until he finally woke up the morning after his birthday, relieved that the day was over. Noah had come to expect it. Truthfully, he didn't like Tate's birthday much either. It always reminded him of Emily, of everything that had happened, and all the pain that seemed to resurface every year, no matter how much time had passed. If Noah were being honest with himself, he wished he could sleep through the entire day, too. He heard the mattress shift. Turning his head, he watched as Tate rolled over, crawled across the bed, and climbed on top of him, straddling his waist as though seeking comfort without ever admitting he needed it. Tate leaned forward, smacking his lips in irritation before letting out a long, exhausted sigh. "One of these years," Tate muttered, "I'm just going to get in my car and disappear for the whole day." Noah looked up at him quietly. "I'll drive somewhere nobody knows me." Tate shook his head. "So nobody can find me." His jaw tightened. "So nobody can bother me." He looked away for a moment before adding bitterly, "The last thing I need is people fucking bothering me." Noah rested a hand on Tate's side, not trying to change his mind or argue with him. "If that's what you ever want to do," Noah said softly, "I'll make sure nobody knows where you are." Tate looked back down at him. "You shouldn't have to spend your birthday defending your peace." For the first time since the phone had rung, some of the tension left Tate's face. He didn't smile. He simply stayed where he was, lying across Noah, allowing himself a rare moment of silence in the arms of the one person who understood why birthdays had never felt like something worth celebrating. "To be honest," Noah said quietly, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles against Tate's side, "birthdays were never really a big thing for me either." Tate remained silent, listening. "My mom only celebrated 3 of my birthdays." He paused. "One of them was before my dad died, before my 4th birthday." His voice stayed calm, though there was a familiar sadness beneath it. "After that, she was always working. Sometimes she forgot, sometimes she didn't seem to care, maybe she just had too much on her mind." Noah gave a small shrug. "So birthdays were never really my favorite thing either." He looked into Tate's hazel eyes. "The only birthdays I've ever really enjoyed were the ones spent with family and friends. Those were the ones that actually meant something." Tate was quiet for a long moment. Unlike Noah, though, Tate didn't just dislike his own birthday. He disliked birthdays altogether. He rarely enjoyed celebrating anyone else's either, because every birthday was another reminder of his own, another reminder of everything he wished he could forget. Noah hesitated before asking the question that had lingered in his mind for years. Why do you hate your birthday so much? The change in Tate was immediate. His entire body went rigid. Every muscle tensed beneath Noah's hand. His jaw locked. His breathing became shallow. The warmth that had been slowly returning to him vanished in an instant, replaced by a wall of tension so palpable that Noah could almost feel it pressing against the room. For a long moment, Tate didn't answer. He simply stared past Noah, his expression unreadable, as though the question had opened a door he had spent years trying to keep firmly shut. Just then, Tate's mobile phone began vibrating on the bedside table. The sharp ringtone cut through the silence. Tate stared at it in disbelief. He had ripped the landline out of the wall, thinking that would finally buy him some peace. Apparently not. His work phone was ringing now. Tate shut his eyes and let out a slow, frustrated breath. I swear to God, he growled, if it's one of your fucking friends, Noah, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. Noah glanced at the screen but couldn't make out the caller's name before Tate snatched the phone off the table. Hello. Noah could hear a man's voice speaking from the other end, but the words were too muffled to make out. Whoever it was talking quickly, and Noah couldn't tell whether the caller was angry, worried, or simply trying to explain something. He watched Tate instead. At first, Tate listened without saying a word. Then something changed. His entire body jerked. Every muscle tightened at once. The easy weight of him lying across Noah suddenly became rigid, as though every tendon in his body had been pulled taut. Noah had seen Tate angry before. He had seen him jealous. He had seen him throw things, scream, and storm out of rooms. But this was different. A violent, instinctive rage swept over Tate so suddenly that Noah felt it through the way Tate's body tensed against him. It was the same look Noah had only seen once before. The day Tate had wrapped both hands around Mark's throat. That memory flashed through Noah's mind so vividly that it made his stomach knot. Tate's hazel eyes had gone frighteningly still. His breathing slowed instead of quickening. His jaw clenched so hard the muscles stood out along the sides of his face. He didn't blink. He simply listened. Noah's pulse quickened. Whoever was on the other end of that phone had just provoked a level of fury Noah hadn't witnessed in years. And the terrifying part was that Tate was still lying on top of him, perfectly motionless, as if all of that rage had nowhere to go except inward. Tate shifted the phone slightly in his hand, angling the screen away and then back again as though confirming what he was seeing. Noah caught a glimpse of the number. A New York City area code. Before Noah could ask anything, Tate's expression hardened. The anger that had been building finally broke through. I fucking told you not to call me, Tate snapped into the phone. His voice was low, controlled, but Noah could hear the fury underneath every word. You don't have to check in on me every damn birthday. Tate listened for a moment, his eyes narrowing. No. A pause. It's already been done, it's over. His fingers tightened around the phone. If I want to buy your property, I will call you. You don't need to keep calling me and reminding me. Another pause. Then Tate's temper broke. Stop harassing me, you son of a bitch. He ended the call abruptly. The room went silent again. Tate lowered the phone slowly, still breathing heavily. Noah watched him carefully. That wasn't the same anger he had seen earlier with Linus. This was something older, something personal. Whoever had been calling him wasn't just irritating him, they were touching a wound that clearly hadn't healed. Tate stared at the phone in his hand for several seconds before placing it face down on the nightstand. Noah didn't ask who it was. Not yet. He had learned over the years that when Tate reached this level of anger, pushing for answers only made him retreat further. Instead, he kept his hand resting gently against Tate's back, silently reminding him that he was there. But Noah couldn't ignore the question forming in his mind. 2 calls. 2 people from Tate's past. Both on the night before his 25th birthday. And both had managed to bring out a side of Tate that Noah had hoped he would never have to see again. Tate's body was so tense that Noah felt like he could have bounced a quarter off of him. Every muscle was locked. Even after Tate ended the call with the New York City number, the anger didn't leave. It stayed trapped inside him, running through every inch of his body. His shoulders were rigid, his jaw clenched, and his breathing was still uneven. Noah watched him for a moment, knowing that words probably weren't going to help. So instead he tried something else. He reached over and lightly tickled Tate's ribs, hopping to break through the wall of tension that had taken over him. For a second nothing happened. Then Tate's shoulders shifted slightly. Encouraged, Noah tried again, attempting to coax even the smallest laugh out of him. Unfortunately, his hand moved a little lower than he intended. The second Noah realized it, he immediately pulled his hand back. "Sorry," Noah said quickly, a little embarrassed. He looked away for a moment. "I was just trying to make you laugh." The anger on Tate's face didn't disappear completely, but something in his expression softened. Noah wasn't trying to dismiss what had happened. He wasn't pretending the calls didn't matter or that Tate's feelings weren't real. He was just trying to remind him that he was still here. That he was still safe. That not every moment had to be filled with anger. Tate looked down at Noah, his tense expression slowly easing as he realized what Noah had been trying to do. Even on the night he hated most, Noah was still trying to find a way to make him smile. Tate's anger slowly began to drain away. The sharpness in his expression faded first. Then his shoulders, which had been locked with tension for what felt like hours, finally loosened. The rage that had been burning through him settled into something quieter, something neutral. Noah noticed the change immediately. He had spent years learning Tate's moods, learning the difference between anger that was just frustration and anger that came from somewhere deeper. This had been the second kind. The kind where Tate wasn't just upset, he was overwhelmed, cornered, and trying to protect himself from feelings he didn't know how to handle. But now Tate was looking at him differently. His eyes moved over Noah's face and something clicked. Tate realized Noah wasn't just sitting there patiently. He realized Noah had been absorbing all of it, the phone calls, the yelling, the tension, the memories that came rushing back every year around his birthday. And somehow, through all of it, Noah had still been trying to make him feel better. Tate's expression softened. "You were trying to make me laugh," Tate said quietly. Noah gave a small embarrassed smile. "Yeah." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Tate's mouth twitched. A small smile appeared. And before Noah could react, Tate reached down and started tickling his ribs. "No, Tate." Noah immediately tried to move, but he was completely trapped underneath him. Tate had the advantage and he knew it. "Tate, stop." But Tate wasn't listening. His fingers moved relentlessly along Noah's sides, showing absolutely no mercy. The seriousness of the night disappeared in an instant. Noah burst into laughter, squirming beneath him as he tried to escape. Okay, stop." Tate only laughed. "Nope. No, Tate." Noah's laughter filled the room as he twisted helplessly. "Come on, Noah," Tate teased, "give up." "Never." Tate continued until Noah was practically breathless. "Uncle," Noah finally shouted. Tate didn't stop. "Uncle, uncle, uncle." Noah was laughing so hard he could barely get the words out. "Okay, I surrender, stop tickling me." Eventually Tate finally stopped. Noah lay there catching his breath, looking up at him with a mixture of amusement and exhaustion. Tate watched him for a moment before his expression became serious again, but not angry this time. "Promise me something." Noah raised an eyebrow. "What?" "No birthday comments." Noah blinked. "Tate. I'm serious." Tate's voice was firm, but there was no anger behind it. "Don't say happy birthday, don't make jokes about it, don't do any birthday stuff." He paused. "Ask me why I don't like birthdays if you want, but then leave it alone." Noah studied him for a moment before nodding. "Okay." Tate relaxed slightly. "I'll eat the homemade cake you made." Noah smiled. "But no birthday signs, no decorations, no colors, nothing that makes it feel like some big event." "Agreed." Noah nodded. "Agreed." Tate leaned down and kissed him gently on the cheek. "Good." Noah smiled. "Go to bed, Birth." He stopped himself just in time. Tate immediately noticed. A small amused smile appeared on his face. Noah cleared his throat. "Good night, Tate." Tate smiled faintly. "Good night, Noe." He yawned, pulling the blue duvet up over both of them until they were tucked beneath it. For the first time all night, the room felt peaceful. No phone calls. No arguments. No reminders. Just the two of them lying together in the quiet. Happy dreams, Noah whispered. Tate closed his eyes. Happy dreams, Noe. And eventually, with the world shut out beneath the blue blanket, they both drifted back to sleep. Morning light filtered through the half-drawn blinds, stripping the bedroom floor with pale gold. Both young men lay tangled on the narrow mattress, sheets kicked down to their waists. Noah's eyelids fluttered open after another restless stretch of sleep. Fragments of last night's party still clung to him, Emily's face flashing in his mind, the laughter, the awkwardness of Tate's drunken lap-sitting. He blinked slowly, trying to shake the images away. Beside him, Tate's body moved in restless waves. His hips rocked forward and back in a slow, unconscious rhythm like pedaling an invisible bike. Every few seconds his whole torso lifted an inch or two before dropping again, pressing his weight down onto Noah's side. The mattress springs creaked softly with each bounce. Noah felt the warm press of Tate's bare chest against his ribs, the faint rasp of stubble where Tate's cheek brushed his shoulder. Noah cracked one eye open. The first thing he saw was Tate's mouth hovering over his own chest. Tate's lips were parted, tongue working in slow, wet circles. The pink muscle dragged deliberately across Noah's left nipple, lapping and sucking with soft, greedy sounds. Wet smacks and low, contented hums that sounded exactly like someone enjoying a cold scoop of ice cream. Each lick pulled the small nub between Tate's lips before releasing it with a quiet pop, only for the tongue to return and swirl again. Noah's breath caught. He stayed perfectly still, staring down at the sight. Tate's eyes remained closed, lashes dark against flushed cheeks. His jaw worked gently, making those same ridiculous eating noises while his hips continued their slow, riding motion. The tip of his tongue flicked faster for a moment, then flattened and dragged in long strokes, leaving the nipple shiny and stiff. Noah felt heat crawl up his neck. This was his buddy, nothing more, and yet here Tate was, mouth sealed around his nipple like it was dessert. The contrast between the absurd licking sounds and the intimate contact made Noah's stomach tighten. Tate's body gave another little bounce, hips rising and falling once more before settling heavily again. His tongue pressed flat and broad, then curled to flick the very tip of Noah's nipple in quick, repetitive motions. A soft moan vibrated against the skin as Tate sucked harder, pulling the sensitive bud deeper into his mouth. Noah's lips twitched, a quiet chuckle escaped before he could stop it. The sound grew into full laughter, shoulders shaking beneath Tate's weight. The movement finally stirred Tate, his eyes opened halfway, still glazed with sleep. He blinked once, twice. Then registered the firm nipple between his lips and the warm skin under his tongue. Tate jerked back instantly, mouth popping free with a wet sound. A thin strand of saliva stretched between his lower lip and Noah's chest before breaking, his face flushed dark red. Sorry, Tate mumbled, voice hoarse. I thought I was eating pistachio ice cream. Noah laughed harder, the sound filling the small room. He wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand, chest still heaving from the sudden hilarity of the moment. Tate stayed frozen above him, lips parted, staring down at the glistening nipple he'd just released. Morning light filtered through the half-drawn blinds, stripping the bedroom floor with pale gold. Both young men lay tangled on the narrow mattress, sheets kicked down to their waists. Noah's eyelids fluttered open after another restless stretch of sleep. Fragments of last night's party still clung to him, Emily's face flashing in his mind, the laughter, the awkwardness of Tate's drunken lap-sitting. He blinked slowly, trying to shake the images away. Beside him, Tate's body moved in restless waves. His hips rocked forward and back in a slow, unconscious rhythm like pedaling an invisible bike. Every few seconds his whole torso lifted an inch or two before dropping again, pressing his weight down onto Noah's side. The mattress springs creaked softly with each bounce. Noah felt the warm press of Tate's bare chest against his ribs, the faint rasp of stubble where Tate's cheek brushed his shoulder. Noah cracked one eye open. The first thing he saw was Tate's mouth hovering over his own chest. Tate's lips were parted, tongue working in slow, wet circles. The pink muscle dragged deliberately across Noah's left nipple, lapping and sucking with soft, greedy sounds. Wet smacks and low, contented hums that sounded exactly like someone enjoying a cold scoop of ice cream. Each lick pulled the small nub between Tate's lips before releasing it with a quiet pop, only for the tongue to return and swirl again. Noah's breath caught. He stayed perfectly still, staring down at the sight. Tate's eyes remained closed, lashes dark against flushed cheeks. His jaw worked gently, making those same ridiculous eating noises while his hips continued their slow, riding motion. The tip of his tongue flicked faster for a moment, then flattened and dragged in long strokes, leaving the nipple shiny and stiff. Noah felt heat crawl up his neck. This was his buddy, nothing more, and yet here Tate was, mouth sealed around his nipple like it was dessert. The contrast between the absurd licking sounds and the intimate contact made Noah's stomach tighten. Tate's body gave another little bounce, hips rising and falling once more before settling heavily again. His tongue pressed flat and broad, then curled to flick the very tip of Noah's nipple in quick, repetitive motions. A soft moan vibrated against the skin as Tate sucked harder, pulling the sensitive bud deeper into his mouth. Tate jerked back instantly, mouth popping free with a wet sound. A thin strand of saliva stretched between his lower lip and Noah's chest before breaking, his face flushed dark red. "Sorry," Tate mumbled, voice hoarse. "I thought I was eating pistachio ice cream." Noah laughed harder, the sound filling the small room. He wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand, chest still heaving from the sudden hilarity of the moment. Tate stayed frozen above him, lips parted, staring down at the glistening nipple he'd just released. "Don't tell anyone I ever did that," Tate said, poking Noah in the center of the chest for emphasis. Noah's grin immediately widened. "Oh, you heard me. I think Susie would love to know." Tate narrowed his eyes. "No. She'd probably like to know how you eat your ice cream." A blush immediately crept across Tate's face. Noah couldn't resist. "Did I taste good?" he asked with a giggle. "Oh, you littles." Before Noah could finish laughing, Tate clapped a hand firmly over his mouth. "Not one word," Tate warned, though he was clearly fighting back a smile. "You blonde little troublemaker." Noah's blue eyes sparkled mischievously. "If you tell anyone," Tate continued, trying to sound intimidating despite the amusement creeping into his voice, "I'll spank you." Noah tried to answer, but every word came out as nothing more than muffled noises against Tate's palm. "MMMPH." Tate raised an eyebrow. "What was that?" "MMPH mem. I still can't understand you." Noah reached up, gently tapping Tate's wrist as if asking to be released. Instead, Tate chuckled. "I think I prefer you this way." Noah rolled his eyes dramatically before giving Tate's hand a playful puff of air, making Tate laugh despite himself. "You're impossible," Tate said, shaking his head. Noah nodded enthusiastically in agreement, his smile still obvious even beneath Tate's hand. After a few more seconds, Tate finally relented and lowered his hand. The moment Noah's mouth was free, he inhaled dramatically. "I was going to say." Tate pointed a warning finger at him. "Careful." Noah laughed. "I was going to say, your secret's safe with me." Tate eyed him suspiciously. "I don't believe you for 1 second." "You shouldn't," Noah admitted with another grin. Tate groaned, flopped backward onto the bed beside him, and covered his face with both hands. "I've created a monster." Noah scooted closer until their shoulders touched. "You absolutely did." Despite himself, Tate laughed quietly. It was the first genuine laugh Noah had heard from him all night. "You're lucky I like you," Noah said with a mischievous grin. Tate looked at him suspiciously. "Oh. Usually," Noah continued with exaggerated seriousness, "I take girls out to dinner before they get to lick my personal ice cream." Tate shot him an unamused smirk that was ruined by the corner of his mouth threatening to smile. "You are never going to let this go, are you?" "Nope." Noah's answer came without a second's hesitation. Tate let out a dramatic sigh and shook his head. "I knew I shouldn't have done that." "But you did." "I know. And now you're going to hear about it forever." Tate pointed a finger at him. "I regret everything." Noah laughed. "I know you do." The teasing slowly faded, and Noah's smile softened. "I'm just trying to distract you from today." He carefully avoided the word Tate had forbidden him from saying. Tate noticed. A small look of appreciation crossed his face. Noah continued gently. "So." He brushed a loose strand of hair away from Tate's forehead. "What should we do today?" He smiled. "Something fun." "Something that has absolutely nothing to do with," Noah paused deliberately before choosing his next words, "the significance of today's date." Tate gave him an approving nod. "Thank you." Noah smiled. "So what does sound good?" Tate thought for a moment before looking back at him. "Just us." Noah squeezed his hand. I can do that. We can eat your homemade cake. Noah smiled warmly. I'd like that. Tate let out a quiet sigh. This day is a lot easier when it's just you. Noah leaned over and kissed him gently on the cheek. Then it's just me. For the first time since the middle of the night phone calls, Tate looked genuinely at peace. Oh no, Noah suddenly said, sitting upright. Tate looked at him. What? I forgot to buy frosting for your cake. He let out an exaggerated sigh. I guess I'll have to run to the store and pick some up. Tate shook his head. You don't have to. No. I'm taking my car in to get the oil changed this morning anyway. He stretched before climbing off the bed. I might as well pick up the frosting while I'm in town. Noah smiled. Would you also pick up? Tate narrowed his eyes immediately. What? One candle. No. Tate. No candles on the cake, Noah. Just one. No. Noah gave him his best innocent smile, his blonde hair falling into his eyes. Please. Tate folded his arms. You are unbelievable. Noah grinned. It isn't for you. Tate blinked. What? It's for me. Tate looked even more confused. When you're not around, Noah explained, I'm going to put one candle on your cake. He smiled sweetly. I'll sing happy birthday to you. He paused dramatically. And then I'll blow out the candle for you. Tate stared at him. You won't have to see it. Another pause. You won't have to hear it. Noah's blue eyes sparkled with amusement. It'll just be me celebrating quietly while you're gone. Tate rolled his eyes toward the ceiling. You are ridiculous. I know. And you're impossible. I've been told. Tate sighed the sigh of a man who knew he was losing the argument. Fine. Noah's smile instantly brightened. One candle. He held up a finger. As long as I don't see it. He pointed at Noah. Or hear it. Noah placed a hand over his heart. You have my word. Tate gave him one last skeptical look. I somehow feel like I'm going to regret agreeing to this. Noah laughed. Probably. Despite himself, Tate couldn't help smiling as he shook his head. Before Tate left, Noah made one more attempt. Are you sure there's nothing special you'd like to eat today? Tate was already pulling on his shoes. No. You could pick up steaks, seafood, your favorite takeout, anything you want. Tate shook his head. No special food. Why not? Because then it starts feeling like a celebration. He looked over at Noah. And I don't want ones. Noah nodded. Okay. Noah didn't argue, he knew better. Anything that made the day feel different from any other day only reminded Tate what day it was, and that was exactly what Tate wanted to avoid. As Tate headed out the door to have his car serviced and pick up the frosting, and reluctantly the single candle, Noah stood in the doorway watching him leave. The moment the car disappeared down the street, Noah smiled to himself. He had a plan. If Tate didn't want anything elaborate, Noah would respect that. No fancy dinner. No decorations. No balloons. No party. Instead, Noah decided he would make homemade hamburgers. Simple. Comfort food. Nothing about hamburgers screamed celebration, which meant Tate probably wouldn't object to them. Noah smiled to himself as he walked toward the kitchen. And while Tate was out getting his oil changed, Noah thought he might give Susie a call. Not to organize a surprise party, that promise had already been made. Just to let her know how Tate was doing and maybe ask if she had any ideas for helping him get through the day with as little stress as possible. If anyone understood how difficult this date was for Tate, it was Susie. As Noah stood in the kitchen thinking about what to make for lunch, he couldn't help remembering all the birthdays he and Tate had shared over the years. For some reason, every year something seemed to go wrong. The only exception had been the very first birthday they spent together. Tate had turned 5. Noah, determined to make the day special, had insisted on baking chocolate cupcakes all by himself. He had proudly covered them with bright blue frosting. They had looked absolutely terrible. The frosting had been lopsided, the decorations were uneven, and Noah had somehow managed to get blue icing everywhere except where it was supposed to go. Tate had laughed so hard he could barely eat one. But nothing bad had happened that day. It was one of the few birthdays Noah remembered with uncomplicated happiness. The following year was different. On Tate's 6th birthday, the two of them had been playing on the climbing wall at the neighborhood playground when Tate slipped from the top. The afternoon ended in the emergency room with a broken arm and a very grumpy 6-year-old insisting he was fine despite wearing a cast. The year after that, on Tate's 7th birthday, they had gone to Six Flags. Tate had insisted he wasn't afraid of roller coasters. Ironically, it wasn't the roller coasters that defeated him. It was the Tilt-A-Whirl. By the time the ride stopped, Tate had turned an alarming shade of green and spent the rest of the afternoon miserably sick while Noah sat beside him trying not to laugh too hard. Then came Tate's 8th birthday. They had gone to Disneyland. It had started out as a perfect day. Until Noah forgot to make sure the sliding door on the minivan was completely shut before they pulled away from the curb. The door slid open. Tate lost his balance and tumbled out of the slowly moving vehicle. The rest of the afternoon was spent in the hospital while doctors checked him over for scrapes, bruises, and a mild concussion. Ever since then, Noah couldn't help noticing the pattern. Birthdays and bad luck seemed to follow Tate hand in hand. No wonder Tate had stopped looking forward to them years ago. The older Tate became, the more Noah began to dread his birthdays. It seemed as though every year brought a new disaster. On Tate's 9th birthday, they had gone out for Chinese food. By the end of the meal, Tate had food poisoning. The celebration ended with him miserably sick instead of enjoying the day. His 10th birthday was even worse. Tate developed a severe seizure that morning and spent nearly the entire day asleep in bed, recovering. The cake sat untouched. The presents remained unopened for days. When Tate turned 11, history repeated itself. Another terrible seizure. Another birthday spent in bed. By the time his 12th birthday arrived, Talia decided she was going to make up for all the disappointing birthdays. She hired a circus to perform. At first it seemed like a wonderful idea. Then one of the clowns began teasing Tate relentlessly, refusing to leave him alone despite being told to stop. The clown thought he was being funny. Tate didn't. Eventually, after being cornered and harassed one time too many, 12-year-old Tate solved the problem the only way his frustrated mind could think of. He bit the clown on the leg. The circus ended early. Noah still remembered the horrified expressions on the adults' faces while Tate insisted the clown deserved it. Oddly enough, Tate's 13th birthday was the last one Noah remembered him genuinely enjoying. It hadn't been perfect. After attending a formal birthday dinner at the mayor's house, Tate missed a step on the staircase and tumbled down several stairs. Fortunately, he escaped with bruises and a wounded ego more than anything else. Even so, despite the accident, Noah remembered Tate laughing that day. It was the last birthday that felt happy. After that, things seemed to get worse again. On Tate's 14th birthday, he suffered another seizure. He spent most of the day vomiting and recovering instead of celebrating. His 15th birthday followed the same pattern. Another seizure. Another illness. As if that weren't enough, he was diagnosed with mononucleosis not long afterward, leaving him exhausted for weeks. Then came Tate's 16th birthday. Joey, trying to give him a thoughtful gift, presented him with a snorkel. For reasons Noah still wasn't entirely sure he understood, the gift struck a nerve. An argument erupted almost immediately. Before anyone could stop him, Tate punched Joey. That birthday ended with raised voices, hurt feelings, and everyone quietly agreeing it was probably best to call it a night. Looking back, Noah couldn't think of a single year after Tate turned 13 that hadn't been marked by illness, injury, or some kind of chaos. No wonder Tate had grown to hate birthdays. From his perspective, they had never brought him much of anything except bad memories. The pattern continued as Tate grew older. On his 17th birthday, he drank far more than he should have. By the end of the evening, he had thrown up all over Talia's shoes. She was horrified. Tate was mortified. And he spent the following week grounded. His 18th birthday had seemed like a turning point. He received a brand new car, something he had wanted for a long time. For a while, Noah thought maybe Tate had finally got a birthday that would leave him with a good memory. Then a month later, after Noah left, Tate wrecked the car. The gift that had started as the highlight of the year became another painful reminder. Tate's 19th birthday ended in an entirely different kind of disaster. Joey and Linus became embroiled in a bitter argument over a business proposal. The disagreement shattered their relationship, eventually leading Linus to move to Europe. It was a fight that neither man ever truly recovered from, and Tate had chosen to stand by Joey. His 20th birthday was another humiliation. A girl thought it would be funny to smash his birthday cake into his face. Everyone else laughed. Tate didn't. The following year, while driving back from campus after spending time with friends, Tate was involved in a car accident. Fortunately, he wasn't seriously injured, but it was hardly the way anyone wanted to end a birthday. His 22nd birthday, spent with friends from Brown, looked promising at first. Then he came down with food poisoning. Again. By his 23rd birthday, everyone hoped for a quiet celebration. Instead, Joey announced that he had made his first $1 billion. The room immediately shifted its attention. What had been Tate's birthday gathering quickly became a celebration of Joey's business success. Noah remembered watching Tate quietly fade into the background while everyone congratulated his uncle. Then came his 24th birthday. Joey made another insensitive comment, one that soured the mood almost instantly and left Tate withdrawing for the rest of the day. It seemed like every year Joey managed to announce something dramatic, inappropriate, or life-changing on Tate's birthday without realizing how completely it overshadowed him. As Noah thought back over the years, he couldn't help noticing the pattern. If it wasn't food poisoning, it was an injury. If it wasn't an injury, it was a seizure. If it wasn't a seizure, it was an argument. And if it wasn't an argument, it was some public embarrassment or humiliation that left Tate wishing the day had never happened at all. After 2 decades of birthdays that brought more pain than happiness, Noah understood why Tate wanted this one to be as ordinary and invisible as possible. For Tate, birthdays had never felt like celebrations. They had always felt like something to survive. As Tate grabbed his keys and headed for the front door, he paused just long enough to look back at Noah. "Well," he said matter-of-factly, "if you don't hear from me in 2 hours." He shrugged. "I'm probably at the hospital." Noah frowned. "Tate. What? That's not funny." Tate gave a dry, almost practiced smile. "It kind of is." "No, it isn't. It is when it happens almost every year." With that, Tate opened the door. "See you in a couple of hours, Noe." The front door closed behind him. Noah stood there for a moment, listening as Tate's car started and disappeared down the street. He hated that joke. Tate made it every single birthday. And the worst part was that it wasn't really a joke. Looking back over the years, Tate had spent an alarming number of birthdays either in a hospital bed or lying in his own bed recovering from food poisoning, seizures, injuries, or some other disaster. Noah never laughed when Tate said it. He always worried that this might be the year it came true again. Trying to distract himself, Noah walked into the kitchen and picked up the phone. He dialed Susie's number. She answered after only a couple of rings. "Hey kid," she greeted cheerfully, "how's the birthday puss?" Noah laughed. "Is he rolling around in birthday glory," she continued dramatically, "or is he pouting, sulking, scowling, and swearing?" "The second one." "I knew it." Noah smiled despite himself. "He banned everything." "Oh. No streamers." "Makes sense." "No decorations." "Expected." "No candles." Susie chuckled. "Really?" "And absolutely nothing that even resembles a birthday celebration." "Oh, that's Tate." Noah laughed. "He's still going to eat the cake." "Progress." "But only because it has no birthday writing on it." Susie laughed harder. "And no rainbow-colored frosting." She burst into laughter. "That sounds exactly like him." Noah shook his head with an affectionate smile. "He really hates his birthday." The smile slowly faded. "I just hope he doesn't end up at the hospital this year." There was a brief silence. Then Susie sighed. I remember last year. So do I. It seems like every birthday something finds him. Noah looked out the kitchen window toward the driveway where Tate's car had been only minutes before. I just want 1 year where nothing bad happens. So does he, Susie said quietly. And maybe. She paused. This will finally be the year. I have a bad feeling, Noah admitted quietly, staring out the kitchen window. Susie's teasing tone softened. What kind of bad feeling? I don't know. Noah rubbed the back of his neck. It just feels like something's going to go wrong. He sighed. Knowing Tate, he'll either get hit by a flying piano. He paused. Or he'll have a seizure. For a moment, Susie didn't know what to say. Finally, she spoke gently. You're worrying too much, Noah. I hope I am. You can't spend the whole day expecting the worst. Noah didn't answer. Susie continued. What are you going to do, put him in a glass cage so nothing can hurt him? Noah laughed despite himself. Because then he wouldn't be able to breathe either. Exactly. There was a brief silence. So, Susie asked, changing the subject, what you get him? Noah smiled sheepishly. I didn't. You didn't. He doesn't want presents. Susie sighed dramatically. Well, if he won't accept gifts. Her voice turned playful again. Why don't you give him a few kisses instead? Noah nearly dropped the phone. Susie. You know. She laughed. Kiss the birthday boy. Noah immediately shook his head, even though she couldn't see him. I'm not doing that. Oh, come on. No. Even the birthday boy deserves a kiss. He's not my boyfriend, Noah said firmly. There was a long pause. Then Susie laughed. Noah. What? You two might as well be. Tate slept on top of you in the nude for 20 years, you held hands, you used to shower together, he used your chest as a pillow, and your names are synonymous with each other. Do you want a proposal? Noah blinked. What? You heard me. He stared at the phone in disbelief. What are you talking about? You seriously don't know. Know what? Susie laughed again. All your friends have a betting pool. Noah nearly choked. A what? A betting pool. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. On what? On when you and Tate are finally going to get together. Noah's face flushed bright red. Oh no. He covered his forehead with one hand. They didn't. Oh, they absolutely did. No. They've been taking guesses for years. We created the betting pool the day you told us about Tate at Brown University, and ever since then the betting pool has increased to $5,000. Some of us chose holidays, others important milestones. It's an ongoing thing which seems to stump us all. We've known you for 6 years and some of us are losing our patience. Just give him a kiss and have sex instead of waiting until the end of time to consummate your love. Noah groaned. I cannot believe this. I can, Susie said, still laughing. Half of them think it's inevitable. They're all ridiculous. Maybe. She smiled to herself on the other end of the line. But you have to admit, you two certainly don't make it easy for people to think otherwise. Noah buried his face in his free hand. I am never going to hear the end of this, am I? Nope, Susie replied cheerfully. Not a chance. Noah didn't know what to say. Finally, he let out a long sigh. Well, all of you are going to be disappointed. Oh, Susie said, sounding thoroughly unconvinced. There's nothing going on between us. Hummed. I'm serious. We've known each other for 2 decades. It'll be 21 years this September since we met in kindergarten. Susie stayed suspiciously quiet. Nothing is going to happen, Noah continued. Nothing has happened and nothing is going to happen. You sound very determined. I am. He leaned against the kitchen counter. I got over Tate 7 years ago. There was a pause. I'm thriving, I'm living my own life. Another pause. And I'm not going to wait around for him. Susie made a doubtful little humming sound. So everyone can save their time. Noah smiled despite himself. Their patience. He chuckled. And their cash. Cash, Susie laughed. If there's really a betting pool, tell everyone to bet on something else. So that's your official statement. It is. I'm sorry to disappoint everybody, but it's just not going to happen. For a second the line was completely silent. Then Susie made an exaggerated raspberry noise into the phone. PBBBT. Noah laughed. Very mature. I don't believe a word you just said. I know you don't. Nope. You should. Susie laughed. I'll believe it when I stop watching the two of you look at each other like you're the only people in the room. Noah groaned. You're impossible. And you're in denial. I am not. Hummed. Noah shook his head, smiling in spite of himself. I'm hanging up before you get any worse. You'll thank me at the wedding. There isn't going to be a wedding. We'll see. No, Susie. But she was already laughing so hard that Noah couldn't help laughing too. Even if he thought she was completely wrong. Noah, Susie continued, clearly enjoying his discomfort, the betting pool situation is actually much bigger than you think. Noah immediately became suspicious. What do you mean bigger? There isn't just a pool about when you and Tate are finally going to get together. Noah closed his eyes. Susie. I'm serious. He could hear the smile in her voice. There is another betting pool. No. Yes. No. The reason why Tate hasn't made a move. Noah sighed. I don't want to hear this. Oh, you're going to hear it. Susie sounded delighted. We have theories. Of course you do. Some people think it's a long-lost secret. Noah shook his head. That makes no sense. Others think Tate is secretly in love with someone else. Also makes no sense. Some people think there's some dramatic reason he's holding back. Susie. Someone even suggested there has to be some medical explanation because no one understands how two people can be that close for that long and still not figure it out. Noah covered his face with his hand. Please tell me people did not actually sit around discussing this. They absolutely did. Why? Because it's been almost 7 years. Noah went quiet. Susie softened her voice, though she was still clearly amused. Do you understand how long that feels to everyone else? No. Apparently not. She laughed. The prize for whoever guesses the reason correctly is up to $10,000. Noah nearly choked. 10,000. Yes. People are actually putting money on this. People are invested. This is ridiculous. Maybe. A pause. But you have to admit, the suspense is killing everyone. No, it isn't. It is. Susie lowered her voice dramatically. Please, Noah. No. Just give us some kind of resolution. No. The uncertainty is unbearable. Noah laughed despite himself. You are all insane. Maybe. She paused. But you can't blame people for being curious. Noah looked toward the front window, where Tate's car had disappeared earlier. He smiled faintly. Trust me, Susie, even if I explained it, you probably wouldn't believe me. Why? Because the answer is complicated. Susie immediately perked up. Uh-huh. No. You just admitted there's an answer. No, I admitted there is a complicated situation. Which means there's a story. No. Which means the betting pool continues. Noah groaned. You're impossible. And you're avoiding the question. I'm hanging up. Susie laughed. Fine, but I'm telling everyone the suspense continues. No, you are not. I absolutely am. Noah shook his head, smiling as he ended the call. Somehow, Susie had managed to turn his embarrassment into amusement. Even if she was completely wrong. Probably. Susie wasn't finished. Is Tate in love with you? No. The answer came so quickly that Susie actually paused. Noah. No, there's no way. How can you be so sure? Noah leaned back against the kitchen counter, shaking his head. Because we've known each other for almost 20 years. Exactly. No, Susie, exactly. He sighed. We've spent all this time together and he has never said anything like that, not once. Susie started to respond, but Noah kept going. He hasn't done anything that would make me believe he feels that way. The only thing Tate has ever said is that he cares about me as a friend. He looked down. A close friend, a family friend, someone important to him, but that's all. Susie was quiet for a moment. Have either of you ever kissed? Noah immediately regretted answering the phone. Suzy, answer the question. Noah sighed. Mark got Tate to kiss me once when I was asleep. Suzy's voice changed. Wait, what? It wasn't romantic. Noah shook his head. It was just Mark trying to prove something. It didn't mean anything. And Tate? Tate said he hated doing it. Noah frowned. Suzy was silent. Noah. Tate is straight, Noah said firmly, and that's not going to change because everyone thinks there's some secret love story happening. He gave a small laugh. Everyone needs to just move on. I'm serious. I know. I'm going to meet someone someday. Probably my Prince Charming before I'm 30. Suzy made a thoughtful sound. And Tate? Noah shrugged. Who knows what Tate will do? There was a long pause. Then Suzy sighed. Nope. Noah frowned. What do you mean nope? Nope, I refuse. Refuse what? To give up. Noah laughed. Suzy. Absolutely not. She sounded completely determined. Until both of you are married to other people or one of you is gone, I am not giving up. No. I have been shipping this for years. Oh my God. And I am not going to sit here and watch you two spend your entire lives pretending everyone else is imagining things. Noah covered his face. You are unbelievable. Maybe. A pause. But you are not going to rob me of a resolution. There is no resolution. There's always a resolution. No, there isn't. Suzy thought for a moment. Okay. Noah relaxed slightly. Thank you. New plan. His relief vanished. What? Maybe you need to make Tate jealous. No. Bring Mark over. No. See how he reacts. Absolutely not. Suzy laughed. You didn't even consider it. Because it's a terrible idea. Why? Because Mark is not a tool to make someone jealous. Suzy paused. Okay, fair. And Tate is my buddy. I know. I'm not going to manipulate him. Suzy sighed dramatically. You're both impossible. No argument there. But Noah. What? You have to admit one thing. What? After 20 years, it is a little suspicious. Noah opened his mouth to argue. Then stopped. Because unfortunately, he knew exactly what she meant. And that was the most annoying part. I buried it, Noah said quietly. I fell out of love with Tate in 1986. There's nothing left to talk about there. There's little to nothing to pursue because I'm not that person anymore. Suzy listened to him carefully, but Noah continued before she could respond. And honestly, I should probably thank Tate for never reciprocating. If he had felt the same way I did, I don't know where I would be. I wouldn't have the friends I have now. I wouldn't have found my hobbies, earned my degree at Brown, or pushed myself to build a life beyond my mother's death. He paused, looking down as if trying to make peace with something he had carried for years. Tate changed my life, but not in the way I wanted him to. He forced me to grow even if he never meant to, and I can't resent him for not loving me the way I loved him. Noah shook his head. If Tate had felt the way I did, I don't want to ruin the closeness we have now chasing something that was never possible. Tate is straight, I'm not. Neither of us should have to become someone else just to make the other person happy. His voice softened. If either of us has to change a fundamental part of who we are for this to work, then that isn't love, that's a tragedy. Tate is happy with the relationship we have now, Noah said. He hasn't changed the boundaries, the expectations, or the way he sees our platonic fellowship, and honestly, I respect that. He leaned back, letting out a slow breath. Even if he walked through the door an hour from now and said, Noah, I want to be lovers, my answer would be no. Suzy looked surprised. No. No, Noah repeated. Because I don't want that anymore, not because I don't care about him. I care about him more than almost anyone in my life. But I don't want to take what we have and turn it into something that was built on years of hopping, waiting, and wanting something he couldn't give me. He looked down at his hands. That's all there is to say, Suzy. Tate is going to meet a woman, get married, have children, or he's going to build a life surrounded by his friends, and either one of those things is okay. His happiness doesn't have to include me in the way I once imagined. Noah was quiet for a moment. I think I need to grow beyond romantic nonsense. I think I need to stop chasing things that can't happen and stop romanticizing pain just because it feels meaningful. He gave a small tired smile. Some things aren't meant to be fixed, some things are just meant to be accepted, and I don't think wanting something impossible has been good for me anymore. Susie didn't like what she was hearing, not because she didn't understand Noah's point, but because she had spent years watching something Noah seemed determined to dismiss. I see the way you look at him, she said, and I see the way he looks at you during Sunday dinners and parties. Noah, he looks at you like you hung the moon. Noah opened his mouth to respond, but Susie kept going. And it's not just me, I've noticed other people noticing it too. Uncle Joey notices, Terrence notices, everyone notices. You would have to be completely blind not to see it. She shook her head, frustrated. You two love each other. I don't know what kind of love it is, and I don't know why Tate refuses to acknowledge what's right in front of him, but it's there. Susie leaned forward, her expression softening but her voice still full of conviction. For some reason, Tate has his head so far up his own ass that he can't see that you're one of the best things that ever happened to him. She sighed, throwing her hands up. Honestly, sometimes I wish I could just roll up a newspaper and start swatting him, like, Tate, wake up. Maybe if I shake some marbles around in your head, something will finally click. Despite herself, Noah almost smiled, but Susie wasn't finished. Because if he doesn't figure it out soon, he's going to lose you. And I don't mean lose you in some dramatic, romantic movie way. I mean, he's going to wake up one day and realize that the person who has always been there for him, the person who understands him, supports him, and loves him, is no longer waiting for him to see it. She looked at Noah seriously. Look at you, you're a catch, you're more than that, you're a prince, Noah. You have built an incredible life and you have given Tate something most people spend their whole lives looking for. Susie's voice lowered. And if Tate doesn't notice what he has before it's too late, if he lets you walk away because he's too stubborn or too afraid or too lost in his own head, that will be the biggest mistake he's ever made. Susie shook her head as she talked on the phone, still trying to make sense of everything. I even asked Uncle Joey if he had any insight into Tate's problems, she said. Like, why can't he express himself? Why Tate refuses to acknowledge what everyone else seems to see? Why won't he just admit that he loves you? She paused, remembering the conversation. Uncle Joey just looked at me and said, it's just the way the Blue family operates. Susie let out a disbelieving laugh. He told me Terrence was the same way. It took Terrence over a year to finally admit to Talia that he loved her. Over a year. Rich people are so emotionally messed up sometimes it's a miracle any of them ever manage to marry the person they actually love. Noah stayed quiet, listening. I asked Joey if he knew whether Tate had ever been in love before, Susie continued. And Noah, his whole expression changed. He got this look on his face as he'd always suspected there was someone, but he never knew for sure. She sighed. And I've asked everybody, everyone who knows Tate. Susie's voice softened. Tate has never been in love. He's 25 years old and he's never had a girlfriend. He's been with women, sure, but he's never had a real, long-term relationship. His friends have even wondered if he's capable of having romantic or sexual feelings for someone beyond a one-night thing. She shook her head. Because when people feel love, they express it, they pursue it, they take a risk. They don't spend 20 years sleeping next to someone, building their entire life around them and then act like, oh, we're just buddies. Susie stopped for a moment, then her voice shifted into an exaggerated imitation of Tate. Noah is my buddy, he's family, he's basically my person, but no, that doesn't mean anything. We're just friends. Completely normal friends who know everything about each other, depend on each other emotionally, and have spent half our lives attached at the hip. She sighed. Do you understand why everyone around him is confused, Noah? Because from the outside looking in, Tate's behavior doesn't match the words he uses. Susie didn't know what to say. I've never seen a relationship like yours and Tate's, she finally admitted. I mean, I've seen people in their mid-20s who are close friends, but they don't live like this. They don't sleep with each other. They don't build their entire lives around each other. They don't know each other the way you two know each other. She shook her head, trying to find the right words. You hold hands, you don't do the obvious romantic things, but you share everything else. Your history, your routines, your family, your grief, your successes, your entire lives. Straight guys don't usually have this kind of bond. Gay guys don't usually have this kind of bond when they're calling it purely platonic either. Susie paused. And calling what you and Tate have platonic almost feels obscene because it doesn't describe what it actually is. Noah stayed quiet for a moment. Susie didn't know how to argue with herself because she had spent years watching them. She had seen the closeness, the dependence, the way Tate gravitated toward Noah without even seeming aware of it. Finally, Noah spoke. 1 year ago, Tate called our relationship obscene. Susie looked at him through the phone, surprised by how calmly he said it. But honestly, Noah continued, I don't care what our relationship is called anymore. His voice was steady. I'm done analyzing something that doesn't need to be analyzed. I'm done trying to find the exact label or figure out what category it belongs in. He exhaled softly. I'm not waiting for Tate to love me, he already does. Susie opened her mouth, but Noah continued. And maybe it's not Romeo and Juliet, maybe it's not the kind of love people write books about, maybe it doesn't look the way everyone expects love to look. He smiled faintly. But it's still real, it's just a different kind. Noah looked away thoughtful. I'm not going to ruin something beautiful because I'm trying to force Tate into a role he was never meant to play. I'm not going to push him into being a romantic partner if that isn't who he is or what he wants. He was quiet for a moment. Tate loves me, I know that, I love him, I know that too, and maybe that's enough. Do me the biggest favor, Noah said, don't talk to Tate about this. Susie went quiet. I mean it, he continued. I don't want his reaction to this conversation to affect me. I don't want to put him in a position where he feels like he has to explain something he doesn't understand or defend something he doesn't want to define. Noah looked down, his voice softer. We don't need to be analyzed, we don't need someone else trying to figure out what we are, it doesn't matter. Susie listened as he continued. I like the life I have, I like my relationship with Tate the way it is, and for whatever reason Tate wants me in his life, I don't need to know why anymore. He gave a small, almost sad laugh. Because honestly, Tate's never going to tell me anyway. I've learned to be satisfied with what someone is able to give me. I've learned not to keep reaching for something I can't have. Susie's expression softened. So please don't ask him about us, his birthday is already hard enough. The last thing he needs is people questioning him about something that doesn't even impact our actual life together. Noah paused. Tate isn't going to suddenly change how he sees me because someone else points something out, and I don't want him to feel like he has to. He took a breath. I'm glad you called, Susie, I really am, but you can't fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. He smiled faintly. My relationship with Tate is platonic, it is what it is, and honestly, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks it should be. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Susie sighed dramatically. Okay, she said, surrendering, I hear you. Noah smiled. I'm still going to ship you guys, she added. He laughed quietly. I'm serious, I'm still going to hope and pray to the heavens for what I want, because I'm me and apparently I cannot help myself. She softened. But if you're happy and you're actually living your best life, then I'm not going to push you into something you don't want. Thank you, Noah said. Call me sometime, Susie said. We'll meet up at a cafe or a bistro and you can tell me what's actually been going on. I want the real updates, not just the Tate drama. Noah smiled. I will. They said their goodbyes and Susie finally hung up. Noah sat there for a while afterward, staring at the quiet room. For once, he wasn't trying to solve anything. He wasn't searching for hidden meanings or waiting for some grand revelation that might never come. He simply waited for Tate to return. On the way to town, Tate found himself thinking about the last 25 years of his life. He hated birthdays. He hated the way they made people look backward. He hated the expectation that he was supposed to smile, celebrate, and pretend the day meant something simple when, for him, birthdays carried memories he wasn't always ready to face. He didn't want to remember. He didn't want to think about her. He didn't want to revisit moments he had worked so hard to bury. Luckily, Noah wasn't being a stickler about it. He wasn't insisting on the usual birthday traditions, wasn't acting like the world would end if Tate didn't have a party or make some big production out of another year passing. Because that had always been Talia's philosophy when he was growing up. "We have to celebrate your birthday," she would say. "The world will explode, the ground will open up and swallow a whole if we don't." It had been her mantra for years. But Tate knew the truth. No one ever died because they didn't celebrate a birthday. No one's life fell apart because they didn't blow out candles on a cake. The universe didn't collapse because someone chose not to make a big deal out of one particular day. His mother had thought differently. To Talia, birthdays represented something important. They were proof of life, proof of love, proof that someone deserved to be celebrated. Tate understood that. He just didn't always want to participate. The last thing he wanted was to spend the day remembering things he wasn't ready to face. He didn't want a room full of people asking him how he felt, telling him to make a wish, or expecting him to explain why he wasn't happier. He just wanted a quiet day. A normal day. And with Noah, maybe that was possible. Noah never treated him like he was broken for not loving birthdays. He never forced Tate to perform happiness for other people. He simply stayed. Tate remembered a few birthdays from when he was younger that had actually been good. There had been moments when birthdays weren't something he dreaded, moments when he had laughed without forcing it, when the day had felt simple and safe. He remembered long drives, quiet conversations, and flashes of happiness that felt almost impossible to connect to the person he was now. But he didn't want to think too deeply about why those memories had stayed with him. Those memories belonged to a different version of himself. And they had nothing to do with Noah. That was the part Tate reminded himself of. Those birthdays, those happy moments, those pieces of his childhood, they weren't connected to the life he had built with Noah. They belonged to the past, a past that existed before everything changed, before he became the person he was now. The past was the past. And luckily, Tate told himself it would stay there. It would never raise its ugly head again. He had built a life he understood. A life with routines, friendships, and Noah beside him. A life where he knew what to expect and where he didn't have to dig into things he had spent years avoiding. Some memories were meant to stay buried. And Tate intended to keep them that way. 5 minutes before Tate reached the convenience store, his cell phone rang. He glanced at the screen and immediately sighed. "Suzy." "Oh fuck," he muttered. His first thought was not to answer. He could already imagine the conversation. She was going to lecture him about birthdays, about appreciating people who cared about him, about not being difficult when someone was trying to do something nice. But Tate knew Suzy. If he ignored the call, she would just keep calling. And when he finally answered, she would somehow make the lecture twice as long because now he had also ignored her. With a frustrated sigh, he picked up. "Yes, beautiful, what is it?" Tate said, his voice already carrying irritation. "Good morning to you too, Buster," Suzy replied. There was a pause. "Are you treating Noah well?" she asked. The tone immediately changed. It was the exact tone that told Tate she already knew something, or, at the very least, suspected something. "Sure," Tate said. "Are you sure?" Suzy repeated. "Yes, he was happy when I left the house." "I hope so," she said. Tate rolled his eyes. "Suzy." "I know you don't like birthdays," she interrupted, "and I'm not going to say anything else about that subject, it's closed." Tate blinked surprised. She continued before he could respond. "I know," she said quickly. "Before you start yelling at me, I'm not calling to argue with you about birthdays. I'm calling because I don't want you taking your feelings about birthdays out on Noah." Tate tightened his grip on the phone. "Okay. If Noah wants to give you something, it's because he loves you. It's not because he's trying to annoy you. It's not because he's trying to make your day harder. He's doing it because you matter to him." Tate stayed quiet. "And sometimes," Suzy continued, "you can be an asshole." Tate frowned. "Excuse me." "Intentional or not doesn't really matter," she said. "If you make that little blonde, beautiful man cry, I'm going to punch you in the stomach. You're well within your rights, Tate, to not to want to celebrate any holidays or difficult days of your life, but don't make Noah regret caring and wanting to do something nice for you." Tate sighed. Yes, dear. Don't yes, dear me, Susie snapped. Treat him right, Noah would do anything for you. I know. Do you? She challenged. Tate didn't answer immediately. Susie softened slightly. I was actually planning on calling you about something else, she admitted. But you sound like you're in a decent mood and Noah sounded happy when I talked to him. Tate's expression changed slightly. So keep it that way. He smiled faintly. What? I'm responsible for his happiness now. No, Susie said, but you're responsible for not making his life harder when all he's trying to do is love you. If you don't want a cake, streamers, decor, surprise party, or any celebration, that's fine, but find a way so Noah can express how he feels about you instead of just telling him to drop it. Noah put up with a lot of crap to be around you, Tate, and if you don't want those things, then make sure he can do something special for you. Noah needs to have freedom to express how he loves you, and if you refuse to allow him a way to channel that into something worthwhile and consensual, Noah will find someone else who will appreciate how he wants to express himself. Tate looked away. He'd better be happy, Susie continued. Not just regular happy, I mean ecstatically happy, singing on rooftops happy, because if that man spends his days sad because of you, we are going to have a problem. Do I make myself clear, Buster? Tate tried not to laugh. Yes, Your Holiness. Good. I received the signal loud and clear. Excellent, Susie said, because then I won't have to kick you in the balls. Tate finally laughed. You're terrifying. And you need terrifying people in your life. The call ended a moment later, leaving Tate sitting in his car with a reluctant smile on his face. Susie was exhausting. But she wasn't wrong very often. On his way home, Tate stopped at a bakery to pick up the special frosting Noah had wanted. He stood there for a moment, looking over the options, pretending it was just another errand, just another ordinary stop on the way home. But he still ended up choosing exactly what Noah had asked for. He also picked up a large candle for the cake. The irony wasn't lost on him. He hated his birthday. He genuinely hated it. He didn't want a celebration, he didn't want attention, he didn't want people making a big deal out of the fact that another year had passed. To Tate, birthdays had always felt like an obligation everyone else was more invested in than he was. But his parents had never let it go. Neither had his friends. It had taken nearly 10 years of arguing, refusing, and making it very clear that he didn't want a production before people finally started respecting his wishes. For years, everyone had insisted they knew what was best for him. They thought they were showing love. Tate knew that. But sometimes love could feel like pressure. Sometimes people loved the version of you they wanted to see. Uncle Joey was the only person in his family who had ever truly listened. Joey never tried to force a celebration. He never guilted Tate into pretending to enjoy something he didn't. He just accepted it. If Tate wanted to ignore his birthday, Joey let him ignore it. If Tate wanted a quiet day, Joey respected that. At least Joey had a heart. That was what Tate told himself. He carried the bakery box back to his car, shaking his head slightly. Somehow, despite everything, he was still buying special frosting and a candle. Not because he suddenly loved birthdays. Not because he wanted to celebrate himself. Because Noah wanted to do something small. And for reasons Tate didn't fully understand, that mattered. For the past 23 years, every time March 23 appeared on the calendar, Tate wanted to bleach his eyes. That was how much he hated the day. Nobody really understood why, and honestly, Tate preferred it that way. Some things were easier when people didn't know. Explanations led to questions, and questions led to conversations he had no interest in having. It was simpler to let everyone think he was just being difficult. 3 months ago, his mother had sat down with him and once again tried to explain why birthdays mattered. Birthdays are important rites of passage, she had told him. They mark growth, they mark the person you're becoming. Tate had listened politely, but internally he had been unconvinced. Now at 25, everyone acted like he had reached some life-changing milestone. But what was actually different? He could get a better car insurance rate. He had easier access to rental cars. That was about it. There was nothing magical about turning 25, no sudden transformation, no great revelation, no moment where the universe handed him a new understanding of himself. But everyone else seemed convinced they knew better. Everyone except Noah. Of course, Noah had his own way of being difficult. Noah asked questions. Terrible questions sometimes. Questions that made Tate stop and wonder how someone so intelligent could be so completely unaware of certain things. Noah would ask something innocent, something that came from genuine curiosity, and Tate would have to fight the urge to groan. Sometimes he just had to tell him, "Noah, stop, just be quiet for a minute." But it was never because Noah was a problem. It wasn't because Noah was annoying. It wasn't because Tate didn't want him around. It was because Noah was sheltered. He was privileged in ways he didn't always recognize. He was blind to certain realities because he had never been forced to see them. And Tate knew that wasn't Noah's fault. Noah's heart was in the right place. He just didn't always understand the things Tate didn't say. Tate sat in his car for a moment, the bakery box resting beside him. He pulled out his phone and opened his contacts without really thinking about it. His thumb moved slowly down the list. His mother's caller ID. Terrence. Uncle Tim. Sozie. Jack. Bray. Anna. Andrew. Noah. Names that represented different pieces of his life, people who had been there through different chapters, different versions of themselves. For years, there had always been something he could do on his birthday that made him happy, something small that distracted him, something that let him forget the parts of the day he didn't want to face. There had been routines, places, moments that gave the day some kind of meaning. Something that made it bearable. But now even that was gone. That had been taken away too. Growing up was supposed to mean gaining freedom, having more control over your own life, being able to decide what mattered and what didn't. But somehow, growing older had also meant losing things he never wanted to lose. He locked his phone and leaned back in the seat. Growing older than 12 was a bitch. At least when he was 12, he knew what he hated. Now he was older and everything was more complicated. For 11 years of his life, there had been one thing Tate always wanted to do on his unfortunate birthday. It was his escape. The one thing that made the day easier. The one thing that helped him cope with the strange reality of his life, the wealth, the expectations, the feeling of being surrounded by people and somehow still being completely alone. It gave him a place to disappear for a while. But that was the cruel thing about growing up. The things that once saved you didn't always stay available forever. And now even that was gone. Tate looked back down at his phone, scrolling through his contacts without really seeing the names, then he stopped. One name caught his attention. He stared at it for a long moment. A name that represented a part of his life he could no longer return to. A door that had closed. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he deleted it. There was no point keeping it anymore. He couldn't go back. He couldn't fix what had already happened. And he couldn't move forward because moving forward meant admitting things he wasn't ready to accept. So instead, Tate put his phone away. He would go home. He would give Noah the frosting he wanted. He would let Noah make his small cake and do whatever quiet little birthday ritual he had planned. And then he would hope nobody called. Hope nobody stopped by. Hope nobody looked at him too closely and asked the question he hated most. Are you okay? Because Tate knew what they really meant. Are you okay being 25? Are you okay with this day? Are you okay with everything you're trying so hard not to remember? He just wanted one quiet day. One day nobody tried to celebrate his birth. One day he didn't have to explain why he didn't want to be celebrated. The really sad part about living with chronic, ongoing seizures was that Tate had lost pieces of himself along the way. Memory was the cruelest part. There were things he knew happened, things he had been told about, moments other people remembered clearly that he could only understand through their stories. But the details were gone. The emotions were harder to reach. And nothing frustrated him more than his birthday. He knew he hated it. He knew March 23 made something inside him tighten. He knew the day carried a weight he couldn't explain. He knew there was a reason, something buried underneath all the anger and avoidance. But he couldn't remember why. That was the part that drove him crazy. He understood the pieces. He understood the reactions, the discomfort, the way he wanted to escape whenever the date came around. But the actual memory, the thing that explained everything was missing. And no one could give it back to him. People could tell him what happened, they could describe moments, fill in the blanks, and explain pieces of his own life to him. But it wasn't the same. A story about yourself wasn't the same as remembering it. The hardest part was knowing that some of his happiest memories were gone, too. People would tell him about times he laughed, places he went, things he loved, moments where he had been genuinely happy. And Tate would listen, trying to connect to a version of himself he couldn't fully reach. It was like looking through a window at someone else's life. He knew it was his. He just couldn't always feel that it was. Maybe that was part of why birthdays bothered him so much. Maybe somewhere inside him, he knew there was something he had lost. Something important. Something he could no longer find. And the worst part was not knowing whether forgetting was a blessing or another thing that had been taken from him. Tate had spent years trying to recover the things he had forgotten. Every once in a while, something would break through. A dream. A familiar smell. A song he hadn't heard in years. Sometimes even a photograph. There were moments when someone lifted a camera toward him and something inside his mind would suddenly shift. A feeling would come first, then an image, then a brief flash of something he hadn't been able to access before. One of those moments happened on Noah's 18th birthday. Tate hadn't thought much of it at the time. He had been standing next to Noah, his arm casually wrapped around the blonde's shoulders while they waited for Talia to take the picture. "Both of you smile," Talia had called out. Noah smiled immediately. Tate rolled his eyes but smiled anyway. Then his mother lifted the camera. The flash went off. And for a second, everything changed. Tate remembered something he had never remembered before. Not a complete memory. Not a perfect picture of the past. Just a feeling. A moment. The way Noah had leaned slightly into him without thinking. The way Tate's arm had tightened around him naturally. The way standing there beside Noah had felt so normal that he hadn't even noticed how important it was. He remembered looking at the picture afterward. He remembered thinking that somehow, despite everything else in his life being complicated, Noah was the one thing that never felt complicated. Somewhere in his mind, beneath all the things he had lost, there were still pieces of himself waiting to be found. Tate placed the bag of frosting and the candle in the passenger seat of his Volvo before starting the drive home. It was sometime in the afternoon, somewhere between 1 and 4. The exact time didn't matter much, it was just another rainy Tuesday. The sky had turned gray, and a light drizzle began tapping against the windshield as he followed his usual route home. The same neighborhoods he had driven through without thinking. Then he slowed behind a school bus. A few minutes later, he stopped behind another bus. And for a moment, Tate was somewhere else. He remembered being one of those kids. Sitting on a school bus. Sometimes being bullied. Two completely different versions of his childhood exist in the same place. A life that existed outside of the person sitting beside him. There had been things he did alone, things he cared about, pieces of himself he had never shared with Noah. People sometimes acted like Tate and Noah had always been inseparable, like their entire identities had been built around each other. Tate remembered being in school and hearing the same questions over and over again. Neighbors asked. Teachers asked. Other students asked. Why is Noah so important to you? How did you two even meet? Why does Noah sleep in your bed? That last question had always made people look uncomfortable, especially once they became teenagers. Tate understood why people found it strange. From the outside, it probably was strange. Two boys growing up together, being inseparable, sharing a closeness that most people didn't understand. But Tate wasn't the only person who knew the answer. He was the only person who cared. Everyone else wanted an explanation, they wanted a label, they wanted something they could understand and categorize. Tate had never needed that. Years later, Susie had once asked him the same kind of question. She had been watching him carefully, trying to figure him out. And when she asked, Tate had only smirked. She always wondered why. Susie and her friends had theories. They had theories about Tate. They had even better theories about Tate and Noah. Some of Tate's friends from Brown had convinced themselves there had to be some secret romance happening between him and the blonde boy he had grown up with. They couldn't understand how two people could be that close without there being something hidden underneath. Susie had been the worst of them. She shipped them, whatever that meant. Tate still found the word ridiculous. But sometimes he thought it was funny. People were always so confident that they knew you. They saw a piece of your life and decided they understood the entire story. They saw Noah sleeping beside him and assumed they knew what it meant. They saw the way Noah looked at him and assumed they knew what it meant. They saw Tate protecting Noah, choosing Noah, making room for Noah in every part of his life and assumed they knew why. But they didn't. They had no idea. Tate hadn't smirked because Susie was right. He hadn't smirked because she had figured out some secret he was trying to hide. He smirked because Susie didn't have a clue. Not even close. Susie thought she was so smart. She had always believed she could read people better than anyone else. She watched the way Tate and Noah interacted, studied every little glance and every quiet moment, and came to the conclusion that Tate was secretly pinning after Noah. For some reason, she believed Tate was in love with him. That he was afraid to admit it. That he was hiding feelings he didn't know how to express. Tate laughed when he thought about it. Susie had a vivid imagination. A very, very vivid imagination. But that was exactly why she was useful. Because the more Susie convinced herself she understood what was happening, the farther away she got from the truth. Everyone was wrong. Even Noah. Especially Noah. Noah, who knew Tate better than almost anyone, still didn't understand the thing that mattered most. He had spent years trying to interpret Tate's actions, trying to understand why Tate stayed close, why Tate trusted him, why Tate needed him. But even Noah wasn't anywhere near the truth. And the sad part was that no one ever would be. Some truths were safer buried. So Tate let everyone believe their theories. Let Susie believe her romantic fantasies. Let Noah believe whatever helped him sleep at night. They could keep searching for answers. They could keep trying to name something that didn't have a name. Because the truth belonged only to Tate. And it was going to stay that way. Tate passed another familiar landmark on his route home. For a moment, the road pulled him back to when he was 7 years old. Back then, Tate wanted to be a magician. He loved everything about it. The illusions. The mystery. The way a magician could stand in front of a crowd and make people believe something impossible was happening right in front of their eyes. He loved the reaction most of all, the moment when people looked amazed because they couldn't figure out how it had been done. But Tate had learned something about magic early. Every magician needed help. An assistant. A volunteer. Someone standing close enough to make the illusion work. Magic tricks weren't really magic, they were timing, science, distraction, and psychology. They were misdirected, a carefully placed movement, a hidden mechanism, a smoke screen. The audience saw one thing, while the magician controlled another. Tate had always thought Noah was his volunteer. The person standing beside him who helped him do what he needed to do, without ever realizing his role. It wasn't something Tate had planned at first. It just happened. Noah trusted him. Noah believed him. And Tate was good at keeping things hidden. He had always been good at magic. Actually, he was even better at the tricks than he was at the performance. Because the goal of any magic trick was simple. The audience wasn't supposed to know what was happening. The illusion only worked if nobody saw behind the curtain. And as long as Noah didn't know. As long as everyone else didn't know. Life stayed exactly the way Tate needed it to be. The trick continued. The illusion held. And Tate had no intention of letting anyone discover how it worked. Tate thought about his friends from Brown and how convinced they all were that they understood the world. They were brilliant. At least that was what everyone told them. Their IQs were all above 140. They were the kind of people who could analyze a problem from 10 different angles, debate philosophy for hours, and spot patterns most people would never notice. Susie especially thought she was some kind of wizard. She believed she could see through everyone. Andrew was even more confident in his ability to understand people. He believed he could read patterns, identify behaviors, and connect small details into a bigger picture. He trusted his instincts like they were some kind of internal compass. Tate found that amusing. Andrew should probably return his psychology degree, Tate thought. Not because Andrew was unintelligent. Andrew was very intelligent. That was almost the problem. Sometimes, the smartest people were the easiest to fool because they believed they were too smart to be fooled. Listening to Andrew talk about his own life was fascinating. He could analyze strangers perfectly, but when it came to himself, he seemed to miss things that were obvious. Something had always been off about Andrew. Tate had felt it for years. Psychologists had always made Tate uneasy. People who spent their lives studying human behavior had a way of making him feel exposed, as if they were constantly looking for the hidden parts of him. So when Andrew started acting like he could understand everyone around him, Tate couldn't help but wonder what Andrew failed to understand about himself. Years ago, Tate had spent $5,000 at Brown University hearing a private investigator to learn everything he could about Andrew. Not because he disliked him. Because Andrew was interesting. Because Tate believed everyone had something they protected. Everyone had a story they didn't tell. At first, Tate thought Andrew had the most to lose. He had assumed Andrew was the one carrying the biggest secrets. But the more Tate learned, the more he realized something important. Andrew had secrets. A lot of them. And maybe that was why Andrew was so fascinated by everyone else's lives. Maybe understanding other people was easier than understanding himself. Andrew's background, Tate thought, would have made one hell of a thriller. The irony wasn't lost on him. Andrew was the person who always seemed to have some deeper understanding of the world. He knew about the uncomfortable parts of life, the complicated parts, the things most people avoided talking about. And yet somehow, Andrew could look directly at Tate and see nothing. Andrea, with all of his bravado, degrees, a tuning fork, and a marvelous insight into human behavior, and he was still so utterly blind, incredibly stupid and naive. That was the part that always confused him. Because in a strange way, Andrew's existence was not that different from Tate's. They both carried things people didn't know about. They both understood that people were more complicated than they appeared. So how could someone like Andrew, someone who claimed to understand human behavior, miss something so obvious? Noah's friends from Brown were, according to Tate, painfully ordinary. Not unintelligent. Just predictable and lazy. They believed what they were told. They accepted the version of reality presented to them. They had confidence but not necessarily awareness. Their emotional and critical thinking skills sometimes seemed about as useful as a teaspoon. Susie was different, though. At least Susie had imagination. A ridiculous amount of imagination. Sometimes Tate genuinely wondered if she had been smoking something when she came up with her theories. The conclusions she reached were so far from reality that they almost became entertaining. But Andrew was the funniest of all. A psychologist. Someone with a degree built around understanding people. And somehow Tate thought Andrew might have been the most blind person he knew. The first time Andrew spent real time around Tate and Noah, Tate could tell Andrew thought he was clever. He watched, he analyzed, he looked for patterns. Tate almost laughed. Because Andrew was so certain he understood what he was seeing. He had no idea. Tate had to actively stop himself from telling Andrew how wrong he was, how much he was missing, how close he could get to the truth and still completely misunderstand it. That was why when Susie asked him why he smirked whenever people questioned why Noah was so important to him, Tate never knew how to explain it. It wasn't because she had figured him out. It wasn't because she was right. It was because Tate knew the truth. And everyone else was so completely unaware. For some reason, that was funny to him. Maybe because after all these years, everyone was still trying to solve a mystery that only Tate knew the answer to. Tate lived his life away from the public eye, and only Noah was permitted by him to see Tate at his most vulnerable while he slept and shared a bed with the blonde every night.